to ask any questions that you'd like to throughout the presentation using the chat function. I will be watching that for Dan, and he is happy to entertain questions or comments along the way. So just enter those into the chat, and then at the end of the presentation, Dan, if we have a few minutes, maybe we could just see if there are other questions. But we're here for you. We're having lunch together talking about an important topic, and we want to make sure that we get any questions that you have on your mind answered. So with no further ado, Dan, I would like to turn it over to you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Holly. Thank you for having me today. And good afternoon, everyone. We are at 12 o'clock, 12:01, so it's officially afternoon. And I just had my lunch. I had my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which I have at least 3 times a week because I have always loved peanut butter and jelly. The only difference I do as an adult now is that I actually toast the bread just a little bit. And I wish I knew that when I was younger because that makes a huge difference. And so I enjoyed that. Just melts that peanut butter just a little bit. So we're going to talk about something today that some of you might be interested in learning more about because you might be dealing with this at home. Some of you might have your own family members, teenage, adolescents, children, or have family members that are playing a lot of video games, seeing maybe a lot of screen time through learning, through downtime, jumping on the Xbox or the PC or on a mobile device, playing games. And we're going to talk about the convergence of gaming and the gambling mechanics that are in some video games that kids are playing, and also something called esports, which we get a lot of questions about. What the heck is an esport? Is it an electronic sport? Well, somewhat, yeah, that's true. We're going to talk about why it matters. So it's a pretty free-flowing hour. I have a PowerPoint. I have some videos that I really want to share. Really helps drive the point home of how video games are becoming more mainstream. I was just doing a webinar for the state of Pennsylvania at 10 o'clock this morning. And during the webinar, one of my staff members from the agency I work at, which is 800 Gambler, as you see there, forwarded me an email from AAA. AAA just sent out an email talking about what is esports. So now AAA, the Automotive Association, is now writing articles about the rise of esports. So if you ever had a question about how mainstream video gaming is becoming, when you have agencies and organizations that are not organically lined up to support that or talk about that type of topic, it's really interesting. And so it's funny, we get phone calls to our 800 Gambler helpline, and people will say, my kid is playing video games and he's spending money, or she's playing a lot of games and she's spending money. Is it gambling? Is it not gambling? Should I be concerned? Well, the answer is maybe to all of that, right? We don't know if something becomes a problem for someone unless we start seeing some other behavioral, emotional, relational warning signs. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So as Holly introduced me, my name's Dan Trolaro. I am the Assistant Executive Director for 800 Gambler in the state of New Jersey. Our mission is simple. We provide support and resources for those who are struggling with a gambling addiction, as well as the loved ones and family members who might have someone struggling with a gambling addiction. Because what we know about addiction is that it doesn't just impact the individual who's struggling, it impacts the family, it impacts a community, it impacts stakeholders like ourselves and Holly's group here. So we have to come together and just learn and educate. And what better way to do that than having some lunch while we're inside? And soon enough, we'll all get outside. It's a beautiful day. We have a great weekend. And we'll do that in a responsible fashion. But this is definitely a different time. So it's great that we can touch and reach each other, people that we may not get a chance to talk to, whether they're from Kentucky, from Australia, or around the globe, just to get and share information. So let's take a look at a video here that I have. And this is about the Army recruiting teenagers using video games, because recruitment has been dropping for the armed services over a lengthened period of time. But what they're starting to do now is they're starting to find, through use of gaming, they're able to start getting more interest and start getting some more recruits. So here's a video. This is from CBS this morning, and I hope you enjoy it. I will share, make sure my sound is on to make sure that I'm sharing that, and it is, so that everyone can hear. And Holly, if at any time there's something, an issue, definitely just talk over it. I'll stop it, okay? Here we go.
The U.S. Army is looking beyond traditional recruiting ads as it tries to pitch itself to a new audience. Gamers. Nearly 75% of men under 30 and about half of young women say they play video games. The audience for competitive gaming, also known as esports, is expected to rival the NFL by 2022 with as many as 300 million people.
So I'm going to pause that right there. They just described, in essence, what esports is. Esports is competitive video gaming. So if you are familiar with sports and NBA, I say NBA because on ESPN recently, they've had the Michael Jordan documentary. They've been going through each week, Michael Jordan kind of just following his career in certain aspects. So NBA has 5 players on a team, right? You have a center, two forwards, and 2 guards. There's 5 people that play. Well, esports is very similar. There are 5 gamers, generally speaking, that all have different positions on the gaming board. And they all have a different role. Some are supposed to go in and start attacking immediately. Others play defense, and they're watching the rear flank. They're watching the wings. So everyone has a particular role to play. So esports is a very competitive form of video gaming that involves a teamwork mentality. I just wanted to make sure you understood that before we move forward.
Only on CBS this morning, Tony DeCopel met with the Army's new recruiting commander about how he hopes to turn virtual fighters into real warriors. Tony, good morning.
Good morning. Going to be a lot of opinions about this one. Here's the backstory. Last year, the Army missed its recruiting goal for the first time since 2005. 2 reasons for that: the strong economy, also the slow collapse of traditional recruiting like cold calls. So now Uncle Sam has a new strategy, going not just online, but into video games.
Oh, thank you. I'm Snake from Metal Gear Solid.
At this sold-out gaming convention in San Antonio, people dressed up like their favorite characters, including more than a few make-believe soldiers. But there's one place where the uniforms were real.
This is where the Z-10s are.
Major General Frank Muth, head of the Army's recruiting command, is looking for the next generation of American soldiers.
Is there something about what it takes to be a gamer today and what you're looking for Army jobs that overlaps?
Yes. It's the decision making. It's the ability to take in a lot of information quickly and to be able to make a decision. It's about teamwork.
To help the mission, the Army is putting together the first all-Army esports team. More than 7,000 active duty soldiers are now competing for just 30 full-time positions, playing games like Call of Duty, Fortnite, and League of Legends.
That was 7 rounds in a row for the defense.
And hoping to compete in esports tournaments across the country.
Last year when we didn't make mission, we went down to the recruiters and say, okay, what can we do different? And they said, sir, first, we've got to get off the phones. Nobody picks it up anymore.
That's what got Major General Muth thinking, game on.
The guys talk all the time while they're playing the games.
So it's like an old-fashioned television ad, except it's tucked right into the natural flow of the gaming environment.
Yes.
This is the kind of setup that you would imagine being able to begin a recruiting conversation.
Yeah. Sergeant First Class Chris Jones is leading the new esports recruiting effort. He says a lot of what he does is explain that the Army isn't all boots and bullets.
Be not only in the infantry, but you could be in cyber. We have microbiologists. We have all of these different career fields that, that's why we're here, to tell you about it.
All right, I'm going to give you the questions from a typical recruit. You got to give me the answer, okay?
All right.
Can I have a dog?
If you're a single soldier staying in the barracks, you cannot have a dog.
Can I have a car?
Now, if it's within your budget,
Come on.
yes.
I keep smoking marijuana in the military?
No, currently that is not allowed.
Not even a little bit, not even on the weekend?
Correct.
That may be a disqualifier for a lot of gamers.
Correct.
No, gamers may not fit the old stereotype of America's soldier.
As much as I love my community, we're not as physically active as people want us to be.
But many seem to welcome the Army's new interest.
Honestly, especially with all the shooter games that we have nowadays, I think it's a great segue for kids to they're always like, oh, this is kind of like the military.
See, the cool thing about esports is...
And Major General Muth says the Army is being honest about the realities of combat.
War is obviously not a game. Are you guiding these people into a career path that's going to get them killed?
There's risk in everything we do. The Army, there is in direct combat, it's a low percentage. There's a lot of different jobs that you can do and military specialties that are not combat related. But it's, it's part of being in the Army. It's part of serving.
So that's a very interesting video. And, I guess, I have unstable.
The Army says the East.
Okay.
Oh my God.
So we have, that was fascinating. So as we come back here, so we have about 20 people on the webinar. So feel free to use the chat if you have feelings or thoughts about that video, because what's interesting is that one of the concerns about people who play video games a lot is that they tend to live a more sedentary lifestyle, not very active, as that one individual indicated, the female that said, we're not known for being really active. They also tend to prefer vaping. They tend to prefer cannabis use. So there's a couple of things that we have to consider, and the Army is using this as a screening tool. And what's interesting is when you think about esports and video gaming, there is the benefits of gaming. To everything that we do, we always have the pros and cons. And some of the research has shown that people who play video games in a healthy way, meaning that they don't have preoccupation, it's not taking over other areas of their life, they tend to show improved decision making. They tend to show improved peripheral vision, and also improvements in executive functioning. It's also in the reflexes and reaction time that can be very helpful. That has been spotted prior to age 25, and also to help slow cognitive decline in those age 65 and older. So there are some benefits to video gaming. What the issue, though, might be is this is kind of an evolving trend. And with anything that's new and evolving, we don't really understand the long-term implications. So I always go back to the old standard, which everything in moderation. If we have parents on the line today and your kids are playing video games, everything in moderation, everything in balance. You have to have a lot of tools in your tool belt. You have to have a lot of different ways to find entertainment and to find joy. And sometimes kids will get stuck because they don't know what else they could be doing. It's so funny because I have 15-year-old twins and they live in Bergen County. I live in Morris County right now myself, and they live with my ex-wife. And there'll be times that they kind of get into a rut. They'll do the same thing over and over again. But sometimes, as we know with kids' brains, they're still developing. They don't know what to do. They need guidance. This is where they need our help as parents, as caregivers, as counselors, guidance counselors, or school counselors. Almost a checklist of healthy alternatives to gaming, or healthy alternatives to X, whatever X is that's starting to create a problem in someone's life because of overuse. Find other alternatives. And the key to this is to do it at a time when everyone is calmer, right? Not at a time when you're feeling anxious or stressed to start making a list, because the list will look a lot different when you're in a better headspace. So there are times that, I have on my refrigerator in my kitchen a list of 10 things that I love to do, whether it's sitting on my deck in the sun, whether it's running or biking or doing activities. That way, if I'm ever in a rut and I can't think of what I want to do, I'll go back to that list, and something usually will jump out of, I haven't read in a while, or I haven't read this research, or I haven't read a book. Something jumps out. The one that I always forget to do is take care of my plants. Around my apartment, I have several plants, and I usually forget to take care of them. So when they die, that's my reminder to take care of them. So hopefully you don't experience the same. As we go through here, screen time in gaming. So we have parents on the line, we have student counselors. Couple of noting points here. In 2018, there was a Pew Research survey of parents with teens aged 13 to 17. More than 80% had a gaming console. 90% play video games on a computer, console, or mobile device. So gaming is prevalent. Gaming is all over. It's everywhere we turn. Sometimes you can't even seem to get away from it. Does it mean it's bad? No. It's just a different form of entertainment that's really taken off. In the old days, I'm 44, so back when I was video gaming, there wasn't social connection. There wasn't the concept of putting a headset on and playing a video game with my friend from across town. The old Commodore 64 and the Atari didn't have that. So now with Xbox and PlayStation and PC gaming, you can talk to your friends. It's more than just gaming. It's social connection. It's not feeling isolated. And especially at a time now during COVID-19, we're finding that kids, while they're physically distant, they don't have to remain socially distant. Same thing for us on the line today. We have 20 folks or so, and we're connecting. We're having lunch together. We're spending some time together in a different way, and we're sharing information. This is time well spent. So the question that I always ask teens, and even adults, how do you feel when screen time becomes limited or technology is taken away? And you can type in the chat, because we're adults, and there might be a time that your spouse or a friend or a neighbor comments and says, you know, you spend a lot of time on that device. That might make you feel some kind of way. It might make you feel defensive. You might start justifying the reason. Well, you don't understand. I'm busy. I'm always working. And we do. We have our defense, and our walls go up if someone starts telling us that we're spending too much time doing something. Before we joined today, I was watching the news this morning. They said that 1 in 3 Americans during coronavirus are consuming an alcoholic beverage during work hours. So what they're finding is the rates of alcohol use are increasing during coronavirus. It's not really surprising, because alcohol, like gaming, like gambling, like smoking, it's a form of kind of taking the stress off, taking the edge off. It's a form of escape. So if we see adults are doing that, we also know that children can be gaming for the same reasons: to take the edge off, to escape emotional distress, to escape uncertainty. Because remember, sometimes we like certainty. Our bodies have a great ability to adapt, but we also like certainty. We like to know what to expect. Even if we don't always like the outcome, or we don't like the answer, human nature is, I don't want to be blindsided. I don't want to have uncertainty. And we're living in a very uncertain time, in the sense of, on a daily basis, we don't know what will be open, what will be closed. We're always looking for next steps, for plans. We want to see an improvement plan that things start reopening soon. We're not alone as adults. Kids want that too, and they feed off of our energy. So it's important as adults and caregivers that we're leading the best way we can. And we also have to know that, you know, there's no lecturing. We're all in this together. We're doing the best we can with what we have to work with. So these are uncertain times, and it's great to have resources and to ask questions, because we don't know what the right answers are. So it's great when we can share this time together.
If I can, Dan, if I can interrupt just for a second, or I would like your thoughts on, I know the parent support partners and I, a lot of times hear parents wrestle with taking gaming privileges away from a child as a form of either incentive or punishment. And I would just like your thoughts on that, because I think as a parent, sometimes we think of what the commodity is that will have impact, but I also, the way you just described it makes me look at it a little bit differently, and that it's sort of a way to relax and escape, which is harder to do right now, especially. But I think it's also, as you had mentioned about your sons, they don't have the skills really to know what their options are. So what are your thoughts on that concept? I mean, it's a double-edged sword, in my opinion, right?
It is, especially now. It's such a unique time, Holly, because, you know, we can get so frustrated with our kids because they show sometimes a lack of respect. They are not mindful of the time. They're rude with their behavior when they come off a gaming time, or if you tell them to limit their gaming, there can be explosiveness, and everyone's in close quarters now. Some homes are bigger or smaller, might have many rooms, might have one room. So the living arrangements are a lot different. Gaming is a form of socialization too, as I was just talking about. So if you're stripping someone's gaming privileges away, you're also now socially isolating more. And that's a concern, especially now. So I think it's almost more dangerous to strip it completely, as opposed to really identifying boundaries, you know, and the boundaries can't be, and this is what parents need to understand too, because I need to understand it for myself. I like to play video games. I always have. I play it as a way to stay connected with my son. But one thing that I learned from playing the game is that you can't quantify a game in time anymore. So for parents who tell their children they only have 1 hour to play, that may not result in the best outcome. And here's why. A lot of games that are being played these days, they're social games, maybe 100 people playing at the same time. and you'll play until there's a winner. Sometimes that game might last 10 minutes. Sometimes it might last 25 minutes. It might last 30 minutes. So if you have a child who's in the middle of a round and their 1 hour is up, but the game is still going on, to ask someone to leave in the middle of a game and to leave his or her team or teammates, socially it's frowned upon in the gaming circles, but also it's the middle of the game. And that's why it's better, instead of parents to say, hey, you have 1 hour, what you want to do instead is say, at the end of this next round, I need you to get off the Xbox, right? So quantify it at the end, the organically, naturally occurring end of this round, you come off the Xbox or you come off your gaming console. You'll have a better outcome that way, as opposed to shutting it off in the middle of a game. We wouldn't dare pull our kids off the baseball field in the 5th inning of a baseball game if the time was up. We would wait for the inning to be over. And then if they had to get to a doctor's appointment, because it's happened in my life when I played baseball, my dad would say, listen, you have another game you have to get to. At the end of this inning, when you come to the dugout and you're off the field, then we're going to take you. So, I mean, it's still the middle of the game in that sense, but you're not in public for everyone to see, and you're not impacting the flow or the gameplay. So there are times that we have to find natural ending points. The other thing I would also encourage is if anyone on the phone has ever spoken in front of other people in the past, I do this for a living, I've been doing this for years. A speaker will always have someone in the back of the room who will give them a countdown. They'll hold up a board and say, hey, you got 10 minutes left. Hey, you got 20 minutes left. Yo, hey, time to wrap it up. Because what we know as humans is that our brains do something really cool. And it's called, it gets into a flow state. So our brain goes into a flow state, which means we can lose track of time very easily. I know when I speak, I have a watch off to my side. I have a clock that you can't see now on my wall, so that I'm very aware of this because I've been doing this a while. But some people that are new, they'll lose track of time. And all of a sudden, you tell them, hey, you got to get off right now. Well, that's going to evoke a negative reaction, right? Because as parents, if we give our kids a time of 1 hour, I'll tell you right now, your child is not watching the clock waiting for that hour to pass. You might be, as the parent, you're waiting for that time to pass. But that kid is so involved in that game, their brain is in that flow state, that when that hour's up, if you didn't break down that time for them, you can expect a harsh response. It will happen. I can almost guarantee it. You're going to get a shocked response if they're that engrossed in the game. So it's a long answer, and I apologize, but it's important, because the two takeaways that parents need to know today to try to help diffuse the situation is base your timing, base your gaming activity not on time, but on number of rounds, right? Organically ending rounds. But also, it's okay to say, hey, listen, you've been down here for 30 minutes. If you want to use timing, say you've been down here for 30 minutes, you've got about another 30 left. You know, whatever that means. Could that be 2 rounds of a game, 3 rounds? I don't know. But it's good to kind of give them those naturally occurring break points. Hopefully those are 2 pieces of helpful information there.
Very helpful, Dan. Thank you. Thanks. I think that framing it in those terms and helping us, I think sometimes it's hard for us to understand how the youth feel. So we're kind of, like you said, we're hitting them from the side. So the flow and the end of the next round, very helpful information to keep in mind.
Yeah, and you know what's funny, Holly, is I've spoken at places, and I was out in Pittsburgh last year, and a woman, raised her hand, and I love hearing input because, we all see things from a different lens, and I can really appreciate that. And she had a very, very strict view of video gaming from a negative connotation. So her view was that, video games are all violent and they add 0 to the fabric of our society. That was 1. Number 2, she forbid her son from playing any video games as a result of her view on video games. Her son could not have an Xbox, did not have a cell phone, a smartphone, anything. And number 3, she said video games were the single reason that there's violence in the school. So she had 3 very strong feelings. And I let her speak because she wanted to be heard, and that was fine. I respect that. I respectfully came back and said, yes, violent video games can be a contributing factor, but usually there's other things going on when we start seeing the sadness of school shootings. There's mental health issues, there's unresolved trauma, there's a lot, there could be a lot going on. right? It can contribute, but it's usually not the sole reason. What I also said, though, is by preventing your son from playing video games, how's his social interaction in school? And what she admitted was that he was a loner. He was isolated. Kids would not talk to him because he wasn't playing Fortnite. He wasn't playing. So he couldn't join in on the conversation because he didn't know anything about the game. And so they wouldn't include him either. Right. And she actually teared up because you could see she was wrestling with these ideologies that she has about how she looks at gaming, but that it's actually hurting her son potentially, in the long run, but also in the short term. And she was really wrestling with the next right decision to make.
Yeah,
so,
I appreciate that, Dan, especially the mother who withheld Call of Duty. I think I was the last one to drop on that for those very reasons that you listed. So we have a question come up in the chat. May I share it? They're asking if you're going to address any of the neurological effects of screen time. The participant says she's read that it's like being on cocaine, or that the behavior somehow has effects on the brain.
Yeah, and I can do that now, actually, because on this slide, I'll touch on this right now. And thank you for that question. I try not to get too clinical or too deep in terms of the presentation when I'm talking with families and counselors. When we talk to doctors, we do dive in more about the neurotransmitters and the neural pathways, all of which are relevant. And from a high level, basically, look at the phrase digital dopamine drip. When you're looking at screen time and gaming and social media, we tend to get this digital dopamine drip, something that makes us feel good. And that's what dopamine does, right? Dopamine makes us feel good. It blocks pain. It anchors our learning. What I mean by that is that when you do something and you have a positive reaction that releases dopamine, so to speak, it's like, wow, I feel good when I do that activity. I want to do that activity again. When I talk to older adults around the country about bingo, because we get a number of older adults that love playing bingo, and one woman in each location will always say, and it's usually a female, it's usually the females that share more than the males in this particular case. She said, I have arthritis in my hands, but when I play bingo, I don't feel the pain. And it's amazing. So then when the bingo game is over, the pain returns usually within 30 to 45 minutes. And the natural question is, hey, when can I play bingo again? Because it blocks pain.
I think we got froze.
Oh, is he frozen for you folks also?
No, I think it was only him. We're still here, Holly.
Thank you for putting your questions in the chat. Hopefully he will come back to us. Okay, that's great. There we go. I think we may have even lost him. Bear with us, folks. The wonders of modern technology. Any questions or observations while we're waiting? I'm sure he'll rejoin. There he is. Hello.
So the joys of working at home when they're doing work on your Wi-Fi connection outside your apartment complex in Parsippany, and all of a sudden I'm talking and I see Holly smiling and not moving. I'm like, uh-oh, I've got a problem here.
We're glad you're back, Dan.
Listen, so am I. So in a matter of seconds, I was able to put the hotspot on my phone and reconnect using my hotspot. So now we're up and running again. I'm going to reshare my screen.
Excellent.
And it's going to be like it's just like I took a quick lunch break. Like if you're in a meeting, sometimes you just got to step away for a second and come back. I apologize.
So you're talking about the digital dopamine drip when you faded.
Yes, the digital dopamine drip. So it feels really good. Did you hear the part about the bingo?
Yes, yes. Okay. I'm getting head nods. We did. That's fascinating, honestly.
Yeah, and so what dopamine does, it does anchor our learning. It blocks our pain, makes us feel good. So we start developing similar patterns of behavior, right? Because a process addiction, what we're talking about here is a process addiction versus a substance addiction. If we look at the diagnostic manual, the DSM, for clinicians, we can actually categorize gambling as a formal disorder. It's the only non-substance related disorder that with a diagnostic code in the DSM-5. So it's interesting, but it has similar characteristics to that of substance use disorder, because you talk about tolerance, preoccupation, withdrawal, continuing despite negative consequences. There's a lot of similarities. The main difference, though, between a gambling disorder and a substance disorder, you can't give a positive urine screen. You can't have someone say, yes, I see you're peeing dice, so you must have a gambling problem. It doesn't happen. So with a gambling disorder, you're really looking at the behaviors. You're looking at those as opposed to substance where you can see the teeth and the track marks and the eyes, and you can see physical symptoms and signs. For gaming, what they're starting to find, I was on a webinar yesterday out of Washington State, and there's a company called Restart. Restart is the only inpatient facility in the United States for people struggling with technology addiction. It's an inpatient facility, private pay. And Hillary Cash is the clinical director, and she was saying they're starting to find more studies of people coming to them for their technology or gaming. It could be tech addiction, it could be gaming addiction, right? She's finding more ligaments are stretched, hand issues from people constantly gaming and using their hands in that way. They're starting to find a lot of stretching of the ligaments as one of the physical signs, because you're always looking for physical signs. Hair unkept, bad teeth, lack of personal hygiene, those are some warning signs, right? Bad posture, tech neck is something that we see as a concern. So there are some physical warning signs, but not as pronounced or prevalent as that with substance. So going back to answer the question, yes, there are some similarities, a lot of similarities between cocaine and gambling and now gaming by extension, because those are process addictions. The hard thing to understand about a process addiction is that it's going on up here. Can't see it. I'm not putting it in my arm. Preoccupation is a huge component because we see the time that kids are gaming, but we don't see the time that they're thinking about gaming. Just like we're spending all day thinking about where I'm going to get high next, how I'm going to get it, who I'm going to be with, where the money's going to come from. I have unstable internet again. Hopefully I'm still good, Holly?
You're good. You froze briefly, but you're good.
Working at home. So there is a lot of components, and that's why the important piece, at least that I got out to start, was the concept of those two areas that parents can really help understand gaming, is that it's more based on rounds and not time, and also to kind of break up that flow state of the brain, right? That's important, okay? So let me go back here to gambling in teens. If we start thinking about gaming, today's video games have gambling mechanics embedded within them. So what does that mean? Well, let's first understand that most teens are introduced to gambling by a parent or someone close to them. It could be grandparents putting lottery tickets in the stocking at Christmas. It could be birthday cards, scratch-off lottery tickets. It could be going to the horse track as a bonding time.
Thanks for your patience, folks. I have confidence he'll be back. I see he's still connected. I just don't see him. Hang in there. Here we go.
Terrible. I apologize. This is the worst. I had no problem this morning with Pennsylvania, so they're definitely doing something. You know, I was reading a research about the cable companies right now are just being inundated. Their bandwidth is getting really destroyed. Part of it, sometimes I know when there's a lot of video on, I don't.
Everyone's getting A++ for patience and positivity here today.
Are you?
Are you there, Dan?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, turn my video off.
We can't
If this
hear you.
goes again,
Okay.
if this goes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Dan.
I would say if this goes out, I'd love to have a dial-in or a phone dial-in. I don't know if it would be possible.
Yes, there is a phone number dial-in. I will email it to you while you're talking.
That sounds great, because I want to make sure that at the very least we can, because then I could talk to the PowerPoints and I can send the PowerPoints.
Sure.
You always have a backup plan.
Yep, that sounds great. I'll work on it right now.
Great. Most teens I started to talk about are introduced to gambling by a parent or someone close to them. And we know age of onset matters and experiencing having a positive experience. So if you're a youth who wins a lot of money gambling in 7th grade, you might have a different perspective of gambling than someone who lost a lot of money or who's grown up around family members who've lost a lot of money. But it's more than just money, because what I've realized over time is that sometimes kids want to have bonding time with their parents. And if you're bonding over a gambling activity, you're kind of planting the seed that this is acceptable and this is something that you can kind of integrate into your life as you get older. So your parents always want to think about having a message on to a their spouse. They absorb so much. So we have to be very careful, okay? So early exposure to gaming or gambling, that big win can be an indicator for some of a potential problem. Why do I say that? If you normalize an experience at an early age and you don't see the negative consequence, tuck that away and you carry that with you into adulthood. I'll be very honest. I'll share with you very openly. I've been in this for, I guess, with the Council on Compulsive Gambling for 5 years, but I grew up in a house gambling all the time. At one time, I had a gambling problem. I've been over 10 years since I last played. I was introduced to gambling by my father at the age of 11. And so I only saw the positives. I always had a good experience, and it was something that I just couldn't wait to do, to spend time with my dad, to a possibility to win money. It was just great. But then as life went on, it created problems, and it came back when I was working downtown on September 11th. I was downtown, September 11th, 2001. I saw the planes hit the towers. I saw people jumping out of windows, and I saw bodies hit the pavement. And that's how I used my coping mechanism, was gambling, because I went back to something that brought me happiness, something that I understood, something that made me feel good. And I used that as my coping mechanism instead of dealing with the other issues of PTSD, of unresolved trauma, of loss. I used gambling as a way to escape. So when you tuck something away later on in life, given a traumatic event or a curveball that life throws, some people will go back to that experience they had, okay? So what are some warning signs of problem gambling or gaming disorder? Again, it's a process addiction. It's hard to see. There's uncontrollable urges. There's the chasing feeling. So a gambler will chase money or chase losses or chase action. A gamer will do the same thing. A gamer will chase a high score, will try to improve upon a prior performance. There's lying. That's always a big indicator of developing a problem. The continuation despite negative consequences. So for some kids, we see the grades are starting to decline, and now all of a sudden they're still gaming. They know they should put more work in the studies. However, they can't seem to get off the Xbox. They can't seem to get off the PlayStation. They need that little bit of assistance. They need that help, because again, their brains are still developing. You can know the difference between right and wrong, but then to actually be motivated to change is a whole nother story. It's almost the difference in that 1 foot, that 12 inches or so between the brain and the heart, right? That's such a long distance when you know the right thing, but then to feel and to do the right thing, two different areas. So with gaming and gambling, preoccupation, and then also, like I said, the decrease in grades or drive. So I mentioned that there's some gambling mechanics embedded within video games. And just to make sure the connection's still stable, Luz, can you just wave your hand if you can still hear me good? Yolanda, can you wave your hand if you still hear me good? Holly, is everything good? Okay, good. Just making sure. Excellent. So loot boxes. What's a loot box? Well, this might be a phrase you've heard, but some kids really start getting involved in these. These are items within a video game that contain something of value. So a loot box basically is like a slot machine or a prize box in a video game that when you spend some money, you can get these really cool things. And cool things might be something to decorate your character with, like a cape or a robe or a pair of pants or something fun. It might be something like a new weapon. It might be something of value that's valuable in that video game. So a loot box basically contains a digital item of value. Now, typically people will pay money for that, and then they get a loot box, which is it's like getting a gift. You're buying an unknown thing, and it contains something of value. So this is considered gambling in Belgium. This is considered gambling in China, because you don't know the value of the items. You don't know how much they'll be worth. And in some games, you can actually trade them or sell them for different forms of currency, either real money or in-game currency, which is not real money. So it has an economy, in other words. There's something behind these skins, behind these contents, these digital contents that are valuable, and kids love them. Because you can make a character look really cool. You can make a person look scary. You can make your weapon with camouflage on it. You can decorate things. I'll give you an example. Our small old cell phones used to have skins that you could attach to an old flip phone. You could make your phone have like a camouflage back. People who vape used to buy skins for their jewels. So you'd have a jewel device and you could decorate it in a sleek black color, or again, camouflage or blue. Anything, a skin is just something that you use to make something look cooler. So a loot box is embedded in a lot of video games. This is a concern for kids that play games in their basement or are spending money. So if there's any parents on today's webinar where you've said, hey, you know what? I saw some credit card charges, or my son or daughter told me that they spent $50 on a video game and I really wasn't sure what it was all about. You might want to ask some questions. Hey, in that game, are you buying a loot box? Are you buying a prize crate? You know, what did you spend the money on exactly? So you're starting to get a little more information about what kids can spend money on. But the problem with a loot box is that it kind of mimics gambling. Because if you think about what a slot machine is, a slot machine is every so often you're going to win something, right? You put money in, and every so often you win something of value. Same thing with a loot box. And the definition of gambling is risking something of value in order to try to win something of value. Well, in a loot box, you're risking something of value to try to win something of digital value. Very similar. So the mechanics are the same. The problem with gambling and the problem with opening a loot box is threefold. You don't know how much you're going to win. You don't know how often you will win. And you don't know when you will win again. Those three elements are what keep people hooked to gambling, to gaming, opening loot boxes, to spending money in hopes of winning something. We even see kids on YouTube with YouTube videos now. And what they're doing is they're buying these mystery boxes. And the mystery box contains something of value. It could be an iPhone, could be sneakers. You don't know what it will contain, but you hope it contains something good. Holly, did you have something?
I do. I have someone just typed in a question, Dan. If you have an 18 or 19-year-old who works, but all the free time is spent on gaming, the young adult is very hyper when playing. And for this situation, like, how do you identify if it's normal gaming or if it's turning into a problem?
So it's interesting. That's a great question because they're 18 or 19. So out of high school, in college, starting to have a job, starting to get some more responsibility. Brain's still not fully developed, obviously. We know a lot of gamers do get very intense in a gaming session. So we do know that. I would still use some of the so one website that's really helpful for parents that they should know about is called gamequitters.com. Gamequitters, GAMEQUITTERS. It's a great resource. And on the website, there's resources for parents, there's screening questions, there's healthy alternatives or hobbies that people can have in addition to gaming or in lieu of gaming. So that's a great resource that I want to make sure I mention because I see the time is 15 of. So that's one. Number two, though, I would still ask, hey, what other activities is the individual doing? Are they finding a decrease in job performance? Are they not getting enough sleep? How is their personal hygiene? Are they eating properly? Because 18 or 19, you're starting to get a bit older, a little bit more mature, still not obviously to where we see full brain development and growth, but there should be a sense of, different sense of responsibility. If they're still living at home, are they doing chores? Are they, being held to task? It's not unusual for someone to get fired up and a little crazy during a gaming session, but if that carries over then into how they treat their siblings, if it carries over into how they interact with others, moving through the house in a very aggressive manner, now you're starting to take the gaming behavior into the real world. That's what I always look for. Are you taking your gaming behavior into the real world? And that's where it's starting to, hey, listen, this is starting to change your brain, because quite simply, the process of brain development includes neuroplasticity, which is the reshaping of the brain. And so for some people, they'll start taking their behaviors, the learned behaviors from the gaming world, and they'll start carrying that into the real world. I've had parents tell me that their kids brush their teeth in 3 seconds. They don't chew their food when they eat. Everything is fast. Everything is, moving through the house at a speed of light, because kids get so used to gaming and being on fight or flight. They get so intense, they forget to disconnect from the virtual world, and they carry the virtual world behaviors with them to the real world. Was that helpful?
Very helpful. Yes. Thank you so much, Dan.
Great. So we talk about the psychology of gambling and random reward mechanisms, which are loot boxes. A loot box is quite simply a random reward mechanism. It's just something that every so often you're going to win something of value. And the way that the gaming companies get kids to stay hooked or connected, and even adults, I don't want to keep saying kids, because adults also will play games as a way to escape or as a way to stay, have action or entertainment. At 800 Gambler, I took a phone call about 7 months ago from the husband, and his wife had spent, not gambled, had spent $50,000 on the Wheel of Fortune game on her iPhone.
Wow.
$50,000. Now, that's not a normal amount of money to spend. We talk about social norms. That's not a normal amount. It had gotten progressively worse. And what happened, she had a son who overdosed 4 years prior and died. And her most recent son had just left for college. There was no one in the home. And she had never grieved the loss or processed the loss of the son that she had lost 4 years prior. So she was using gaming as an escape.
I hear you again. Oh, there we go.
Oh, did you hear the part about the reason for the gaming?
Yes, I'm seeing yeses.
Okay. And so it's very sad when someone's using gaming as a form of escape, because she didn't grieve the loss. And that was her form of escape, to deal with the loss of her son. And so, we got her the help she needed, and she started working with a counselor. Because oftentimes what we know about addiction is that we see the outward manifestation. We see the drinking. We see the drug use. We see the gambling. What we don't see is that deeper level of pain. And so when we talk about addiction as a disease, I often like to think of it as a dis-ease. Something's not at ease within. And it could be pain, it could be fear, it could be trauma. In some cases, it could be adverse childhood experiences that are unresolved, right? Or where the ACEs negative outweighs the ACEs positive. So there's a lot that goes on beneath the surface that if we don't get to the root cause of the issue, it just continues to manifest itself in different forms. Risk-taking behavior. It's funny when people say they have an addictive personality, because we know that there is no addictive personality. Rather, there are addictive traits to your personality, right? So you might tend to be more of a risk taker. That might be one. So for someone who's a gambler, they tend to like to also make very risky decisions. Some of the hobbies of some of the gamblers that I know in recovery include rock climbing, jumping out of airplanes, downhill skiing, things where there's a big adrenaline rush. You almost become an adrenaline junkie in a way, as the terminology. I don't like using the term junkie. It's outdated. It's stigmatizing. But that's the term that you might hear. So it's really interesting when you start thinking about commonalities or personality characteristics of people who struggle with addiction. So why is gaming or gambling popular? Well, for gaming, a lot of times, whether it's for kids or adults, it's free to play. Plus, there's thousands of things to choose from. You literally can find a game that just fits exactly what you want to do at any given moment. There was one that I was sharing with Illinois when I was doing a webinar last week for the state of Illinois. and it was a game that came out right after COVID-19 really started to take hold globally, and you can still find it. It's called VRS Fight Club. VRS Fight Club. And what it is, it's an app, and you download the game, and your job, you're like a small person, like a little child, and you're throwing masks at people so they can't cough on you. That was a game that came out right when COVID-19 was starting to get full throttle. So very quickly, there was a game developed that was free to play, and I showed my 10-year-old daughter, and honestly, the two of us were just kind of laughing at the mechanics of the game and how you either had to throw a mask or throw a syringe at them, and you had to avoid people coughing on you. It was, I tell you, you can find anything online that suits what you want. The other game that I found fascinating was a Bible-based slot machine game. And this was for the iPhone. You could have a slot machine social casino game based on your favorite story from the Bible. So I just shake my head in amazement as just amazing of what you can see or come up with. So gaming is free to play. The freemium model means that people can choose to spend money if they want, but they don't have to. That's what makes it fun. Once you've played for free, then you can move on to something else. But gaming also gives people an escape, a connection. That's how my
Dan, you're breaking up again.
Hotspot's on. Yep, still here. I got you, Holly.
Great.
Okay, boy. So what we have is gaming allows for that temporary escape, a measure of social connection, but it's also a safe place to play. Kids need a place to experiment. They need a safe place to fail because there's so much stress in life. There's so many demands, whether it's dancing or sports or academics or work. Where is that safe place? We all deserve a safe place as humans. And so gaming for some can be that safe place when it's done with boundaries and when it's done with a parameter around it. Because we can't just leave young adults or young people up to their own devices. They'll just game until they're done gaming or they fall asleep, right? That's where we have to instill some boundaries and some sense of structure, obviously. So what I want to do for the essence of time here, I'm not going to show the other video I had because of instability. I don't want to run into an issue there. We talked about esports. One of the benefits of esports, and so we've talked about video gaming. Esports is competitive video gaming in real time. And we're seeing colleges offer scholarships to high school students. And then now we're seeing the Olympics are looking to add competitive video gaming as a medal event in the Olympics. So if you're going to get to this level of competition, you have to start at an early age. And we're starting to see these teams, these video game esports teams popping up in middle school. Kids are spending more time playing because they might have hopes and dreams of being that next YouTuber who is an esports streamer who now is world famous. Because that's what kids aspire to be nowadays. They want to be famous. They want to be Insta famous. They want to be on YouTube. They want to be a blogger. They want to, there's even award ceremonies in California now for like, who's the most well-known social media person. It's amazing. Social influencer, right? All this terminology that gets thrown around. So we have to be careful. There's risks with gaming. Gaming can lead to problem gambling. We understand the gas. If you take this little nugget away today, the brain develops the gas pedal faster than the braking system. Always remember that. The brain develops the gas pedal, go, 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 faster than the braking system, which is our job to say, whoa, 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 slow down, right? That's that little opposites that we have to deal with the kids. The earlier one starts a behavior without seeing the negative consequences, the higher likelihood to develop a problem. And what we have then, as I go through this, there's some concerns that if you're dealing with people who have had prior substance use disorder or maybe some gambling disorder, sometimes you'll find them switching over to video gaming as a form of escape or an outlet or a form of entertainment. Be careful, because if some of the behaviors start to return, that can lead them right back into their original drug of choice, or it can lead to addiction switching. I had a friend one time who was in recovery from gambling, and he started playing chess, and he started playing video games, and then he started playing social casino games, which is not gambling, but it has the mechanics of gambling. So it's like playing a slot machine for fake money. He's not putting any money in it. He's not gambling, but it's just the mechanics and the behaviors were all the same. And sure enough, he went back to gambling because he allowed the behaviors to start creeping back in. Similar to someone who is in recovery from alcohol use. And all of a sudden, they go to the same bar on the same Friday night with the same friends, and they're holding that same drink in their left hand, only it's non-alcoholic, but all the other behaviors are the same. That's concerning. It really is, because the behaviors have not changed. So we want to be mindful here as we end the last 5 minutes, and I'll leave some time for Q&A. What do I need to know, and where do I go for more information? Teens, it's always important for teens to know the decisions that they make now affect the rest of their lives, including gaming and gambling. It's not just about substance anymore. It's about the process also of gaming and gambling. Boys and girls can both develop gambling problems. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't discriminate across culture or gender or race. It doesn't matter. Anyone can develop a gambling problem. And gambling is called a game of chance, but we're starting to see those games of chance embedded within video games. That power to win is addictive for some people. They'll do it at any cost, and they'll continue chasing that feeling. It's chasing the feeling of winning because it feels really good. And disordered gambling is as much an addiction just like drugs and alcohol. It only impacts about 2% of people worldwide. Well, actually in the United States, Australia actually has a very high incidence of problem and disordered gambling. It's almost 10% out there. What do adults need to know? Adults, parents, teens want to be heard. Let them speak. You know, they need a safe place. We can't just shut them down. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We try to listen twice as much as we speak. I want to hear what their thoughts are. I want to understand their perspective. The one phrase that I love is rules without relationships leads to rebellion. If I'm so focused on rules only and I don't take the time to develop a relationship with my child, with my young adult, that young person in my life, if I'm not developing those relationships, they're going to rebel. It might be bad behavior. It might be cursing, yelling, hostility. Rules without relationships leads to rebellion. Adults need to know the resources. Gambling and gaming are not isolated. They often occur with other issues. So if we do see someone who's really going above and beyond and starting to become a problem in their life, what is the dis-ease? What's going on at the deeper level? Is there a fear? Nowadays, there could be a fear with COVID, with uncertainty. There's a lot of fear going on. We need to be talking to our kids more than ever to make sure that they feel safe, that they have a safe place. Because as adults, we need to let them speak, let them be heard, and they also can be feeding off our anxiety and our energy. So we need to make sure that we're getting the help that we need. And there's tons of online support groups for families, for adults, for people in recovery from drugs and alcohol and gambling. We all need to support, right? We can't do this alone, okay? You don't have to be an expert, but parents need to stay knowledgeable, and that's why you're a part of today. So what are some resources? 800 Gamblers, always a great resource. Parents are a great resource, friends, peer leaders. GameQuitters.com, I gave you that website. School counselors are great resources. A trusted advisor, maybe someone from the church, from the synagogue, from the temple, whatever your preference is. But always know, do not feel ashamed. Do not feel like you're alone, and always know that you matter. See, we want to make sure our kids always know that they matter. Because too many times they'll start saying, you know, I'm not smart enough, I'm not fast enough, I'm not blank enough. But they are. The fact that they're here means that they're enough. That's what they need to know. So Holly, I apologize for the instability of the connection today. It has nothing to do about the instability about me as an individual. But
no worries. I know we don't think that. Dan, I can't thank you enough for, it's a very big issue. So many things are going into the gaming, the gambling, the escape, which I think is always a challenge for everyone, but especially now with COVID. And I really appreciate how you've put things, I think, at least for myself, in a better perspective. I understand more fully why it's so pleasurable and why it's so popular. And for the participants who've joined us today, we thank you very much for sharing this time with us, and we will send out, with Dan's permission, a copy of his presentation. We did record today. You can hear us coming in and coming out, but persevering. And, you know, I would encourage you to share this information with your friends and with your colleagues, because it is important. Dan, I love that you say that we need to have, the youth need to be heard. And I think oftentimes we're so busy trying to fix that we're not listening to what's going on. And you've given us some really great tools to do that.
Great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the patience that everyone had on the line. And I'll definitely get this out to you, Holly, in the next, you know, several hours.
That's wonderful. And I'm just going to remind everyone to thank you for checking in today. Keep an eye out for your email about our programs moving forward. We are continuing to do, we have 6 online support groups throughout the week, and we are very eager to share those with you. We have positive parenting. We have positive parenting in Spanish. We have a Dad's Hero Huddle group. We have 2 youth partnership activities or groups that meet twice a week for ages 13 to 21 with a very dynamic youth coach who makes it a fun hour together. And we are here every Thursday at noon. Next week, we will be talking about how to talk to teens about suicide, what schools need to know, what parents need to know. And we thank you for checking us out. Stay healthy and stay connected. Okay. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Dan. It was wonderful.
Thank you. Bye.